The first move in the golf swing, most of us get wrong. Let me dive in and explain to you exactly what I mean. So when we start the golf swing, for me, there's two major important parts. One is the trail arm fold. The second is the wrist cock or wrist hinge, as it's often referred to in the backswing. So lots of golfers think of wrist hinge as in this motion. That is actually radial deviation or wrist cocking, and wrist hinging is more this way. Again, more of a flapping action is more wrist hinging. But that's just words, just to make sure we're on the same page. What I want to talk about today really is how we can allow ourselves to start the swing correctly by allowing the trail arm to fold correctly and allowing the wrists to hinge and cock at the right point. What a lot of golfers do in the big error is when they take the club back, the right arm stays too wooden, trying to get the club back online, and the wrists tend to cock very late and hinge very early. So for me, they get it totally the wrong way around. What we want to do is let the arm do some of the work, let the wrists cock to get the club to build some power and load some power, and then hinge the wrist later to keep the club in the correct direction. So these three elements all play a vital role. If I stand to a golf ball here and just hinge, you'll see how that makes the club head go inside. If I just radially cock, that makes the club go up. So the initial part of the backswing should well be an arm fold to bring the club in and the wrist cock to make the club go up. And if we did that very literally, we'll probably find that the club head will be a little bit too much outside the hands. So then there'll be a tiny bit of wrist hinge to get the club in line. Most golfers, as I said, would wrist hinge too much. So the tendency on the focus should be much more on the arm fold and the wrist cock, and making sure this happens early. Now the reason I want it to happen early is so then to the top of the swing we can keep a good structure in our arms and a good width. Golfers that tend to have the arm too straight and the wrist cock too late will tend to collapse more at the top of the swing and get this kind of narrow, poor look at the top of the backswing. And that tends to lead us then to want to throw the arms on the way down. So when golfers have a lot of contact issues and lag issues, we tend to see a lot of wide start of the swings, narrow top of the swings, then wide start of the downswings. And it tends to work in that cycle. So I'd love you to feel that you're almost going narrow, wide, narrowing, wide, if you're going to have labels to what you're going to try and do. Let's get back to the real important stuff. Let's try and fold the arm and set the wrist correctly. So at address, this arm should have slight bend in it in the give blood or dumbbell position, as I call it. Now as we swing back, this arm will further fold like so, as if I'm going to again catch some rain in this hand. The wrist will be a bit more in the shake hands position, but the arm is going to be very much more in that catch rain position. But then rotate the hand back. So if I'm doing that with the golf club in my hand, very much this elbow kind of folds around my rib cage. The gap is not huge, and it's also not stuck. So the guys that say they want their elbow stuck to the rib cage, I would disagree in that. I definitely want some width, but I'd much rather the width come by the arm not over folding at the top. We definitely don't want to bend this arm more than 90 degrees. And I see that all day long really on my lesson studio, that people will overbend the trail arm. We want width. Width is our friend for sure. So what I want you to practice is basically taking your golf club one-handed, putting your finger of your lead hand in your elbow joint here, and feeling that you can fold this arm. At the same time you fold that arm, get that golf club to be parallel to your ball to target line, and start to feel that your thumb works up. So the butt of the club in this position is going to start to point down to a position just in front of your trail foot. And then as we go to the top of the swing from here, we try and feel that arm does very little bend from there, but the wrist can definitely hinge more from there. But again, not a lot more wrist cocking from there. So we try and create this kind of, let's call it an L shape early, and then try and maintain that L shape to the top. And the only thing that then changes really is the lead wrist will go into that flexion or that hinging position to get that club face nice and strong, or keep it square. So at the top of the swing, We want the wrist fairly flat. A couple of degrees of extension, up to about 10, is absolutely fine. And we want ideally the club face to match our forearm if we can. Those are kind of the checkpoint Charlies. But really what we want the main focus of this video to be on is, can we start to get that fold, cocky motion and hinge in action correctly in that takeaway. So what I'd like you to start with is a waggle like that. And then when we get into this position, from there, hit some shots. So we get used to breaking the swing down into those two phases of the takeaway, and then from there to the top, and then hit. Once we've done that a few times, then continue with the waggle and make it into a full swing motion. It felt great. Great ball and turf. Using my brand new clubs, my PXGs, they look pretty good, don't they? If you fancy a PXG fit, just send me a message and I'll help hook you up, especially if you're in the UK. So really taking it to the course is really about then that kind of microwave waggle. You know, can we fold early? Can we cock the wrist early? And I quite often talk about it being in a diagonal direction. So if I have this alignment rod between my feet here, I'm trying to hinge my wrist in that diagonal direction while folding my arm then to bring it in. So on the golf course when we play, it can be just a nice waggle, and as I said, then from there go ahead and swing. So if you struggle with your takeaway, starting the swing incorrectly, give this waggle a go, but also understand the folding and cocking action that you need to make a correct golf swing and to become a consistent golfer.